This is Boston Lanka News, bringing you news, views and entertainment from Boston and USA. I'm Vayoni Dimel. Sri Lankan Americans for Unity and Prosperity in Houston, Texas held a protest rally against the UN resolutions last Thursday in front of the State Department building in Houston, Texas. Over 100 Sri Lankans from the Houston region attended the rally to voice their opposition to the stand taken by the US government as well as to educate the American public. Sri Lanka ended a 30-year war in May 2009 by eliminating the LTTE, the terrorist organization, ushering peace and prosperity to all Sri Lankans. After the protest, the group handed over a signed petition addressed to US Secretary of State Honorable John Kerry requesting that the United States honor Sri Lanka's political autonomy by respecting Sri Lanka's own reconciliation process. We join with Rukshan Wijeratne, one of the organizers of the protest. Rukshan, could you please tell us about the protest Sri Lankan American had in Houston, Texas last Wednesday?
It was organized about 2 weeks ago because a few of us got together and to organize a protest. Now, this is not the first thing that we have done. Consistently, we have been involved with this process or protesting the resolutions that they've had before too. So part of the process, part of that major process, we started about 2 weeks ago to gather people to inform them of what's going on and got their support and basically had this protest in Houston in front of the State Department. And it is part of our new strategy because we understand it's a State Department that's driving this resolution. So what we are attempting to do is actually build awareness within the State Department, and even further, we are trying to get them to understand more of the reality in the ground. And so that's what the protest was all about.
Historically, US and Sri Lanka have been having very good relations and in fact had given some strategic assistance during the war. What do you think that prompted US to bring this UN resolution on Sri Lanka?
That's in fact what we are trying to probe into also, because we are kind of baffled because the US was one of the first countries to proscribe the LTTE, and they have a very proactive role back then. And even during the war and towards the end of the war, we've had a lot of support from the US in terms of military training and various other things. We've been confused as to why the recent change in their trajectory, and that's what we are trying to scope into. In fact, we've discussed with many State Department heads to see what the underlying cause is. And that's something that we are really trying to get into, which I don't have an answer yet. Because in order to effectively, change the course that the US has taken, we need to know exactly what's going on. Is this the diaspora that's basically fueling it? Or is it something more geopolitical that's, the kind of getting them to do this. And we don't have a right answer yet, but that's part of our process is to figure out why they are doing it, especially because I think we have a unique position as American Sri Lankans. We live in the US, we work in the US, and we vote in the US. So it is very important, and we have always extended our services to Sri Lanka, the embassy or the foreign ministry or anybody who wants our services, because we have a unique position to basically talk to them and see why the U.S. is doing this, and that is our goal to eventually probe and find out.
Now, there are two resolutions in the US Senate, somewhat different from each other. So, obviously, there is a difference of opinion in the US Senate on Sri Lanka. Could you talk about these Senate resolutions?
Yes, actually, the first resolution that came up about 2.5 years ago, that didn't have that much of opposition, because at that time the Sri Lankan community was not as engaged because they were kind of taking it lightly. But ever since, behind the scenes, we have been talking to senators and congressmen, basically explaining to them what's going on, or basically explaining the other side of the story. Because when we did have a meeting with congressmen about 2 years ago, organized by the or helped by the embassy. And when we went there 2 years ago, the first thing that they said was, "This is the first time we are hearing the other side or our side of the story." And I think that's the thing that has been lost. And our attempt right now, since the last 2 to 3 years, is to basically educate our side of the story and convince enough people to understand the facts of the facts that you see in the ground itself. I personally visited Sri Lanka in December over Christmas break, so we saw what the actual happenings are, and the allegations really don't match up with what you see in the ground in Sri Lanka. And that's what we are trying to educate the senators and congressmen to explain to them. These allegations are really unfounded, and what's really bothering us is, or what we are trying to tell them is, these allegations are based on, it seems like, false propaganda. And that is our goal, is to basically attempt to educate them to say, this is what's going on, and to kind of convince them otherwise, to change their trajectory as opposed to what they're doing now.
This is what we have been hearing from many US policymakers, that they had been hearing only one side of the story in the past. So, in other words, there is a lack of interest in sharing the other side of the story that needs to share as well.
That is a sad part. I think we procrastinated after the war, after the battles were over in 2009. I guess we thought it's all over. That was a severe miscalculation on part of everyone, I would think, because from what we understand, from our point of view, the war is over. Even in Sri Lanka's point of view, when I say Sri Lanka, I'm talking about the Sinhalese, Tamils, Muslims, Burghers, everybody. Realistically, so the war is over. The country is moving on. But there seems to be another battle that's brewing in the background, and mainly it's fought by the diaspora, I think, to stay relevant. That's how I see it. Okay, so we procrastinated, and they continued, and so I think we are kind of behind already, because they are the ones. Because when you look at the facts, a movie was put out. Then right after that, they try to convince senators in the U.S. to bring resolution, because it took us a while even to come up with a debunked movie for the channel, the 4 video that everybody keeps talking about. So we did procrastinate, and the other thing is, unfortunately, we are not the Sri Lankans are not as motivated as a diaspora, and that's a big issue, or a big challenge that we face, because we always try to get our friends involved, friends in different states, because we have Sri Lankans living in all different states. But it's always, when we go for these meetings, it's a very handful that participate in this, unfortunately. And I hope that people will understand that this is a serious issue. The war is really not over, though the battle is over. We need to unite, and when I say Sri Lankans, I mean all Sri Lankans. I mean in Houston, we have several Tamil people who are involved with us, who are forcing us, to go saying, we have to get our message across as Sri Lankans, not just Sinhalese. So that's the type of unity that we want from the Sri Lankan community in the US, so that we can finally put this to rest.
So in other words, this protest you had, it's not a Sinhala only protest.
No, it is not. No, it is not. In fact, there were several Tamil members of the community who participated too, but not as many as we would expect or want to. But there's wounds that need to be healed. It doesn't mean that they are not with us, but there's also people who are just in the backseat being neutral. That doesn't mean that they don't support us, but they don't want to be vocal. So you have to respect that and get the support where you can.
A grand musical show by two leading veteran Sri Lankan vocalists, Nanda Malini and Victor Ratnayake. Live concert in Los Angeles, their first USA tour together. Visiting USA after 9 years. On Saturday, April 19 at 7 p.m. at Wilshire Ebel Theatre in Los Angeles. Sponsored, organized and produced by Tusita De Silva. Media sponsor, Boston Lanka. There is a talk about double standards by USA when it comes to Sri Lanka. If it's a double standard, why? What are your views on that?
It's a tough question to answer in the sense I don't think there's a right answer to it. I think one problem that we have is, as I said earlier, our side has not been vocal in getting our point across. So that's one reason where you see the double standard, because they really don't see what the actual facts are. For us, it's easy because we know what it is. We have our heart in it. So we see it as a double standard. But mainly, I think it's because they don't have the actual facts. And the second thing is, from what I've gathered, the diaspora is, funneling a lot of money to them. So as most politicians, the money speaks. So that's one issue that we are having to deal with. And in terms of geopolitical, the greater scheme of things, in terms of other countries and how we are treated different, I think each country has a certain value to the U.S. and their response is different based on that value. And I don't know if I can say it's fair or not, but I think that might be an issue when you see the double standard. But what we are trying to convince them is, I think that's where we come, because we are the voting public here. So I think as long as Sri Lankans as a whole can really support policy that will be beneficial to Sri Lanka, I think all that might change, because our lack of participation and our lack of involvement in this process is what has put us back. Because especially like communities like the Indians, they are very powerful because they are very vocal. Unfortunately, Sri Lankans are not that very vocal, or they don't participate in the political process as much. So those are the issues, I think, that has put us in this situation where, or what we call a double standard.
You said there's lots of misinformation out there. Now, if you get a chance to talk 5 minutes with US Secretary of State John Kerry, what would you tell him to show that there is another side of the story?
Number one, I would ask him to visit Sri Lanka and see the facts to himself. I think anybody who would visit Sri Lanka, they would understand, that what they hear outside is not totally correct. The second point I would like to basically tell him is, if the diaspora, as they are, if they are so genuinely concerned about the Tamil community in Sri Lanka, why, maybe they are, but not to the scale that I understand. Why are they not participating actively in the rehabilitation, but so interested in keeping this their cause alive? I think these are intellectual questions that somebody should ask these people and say, isn't that not consistent with what their message is? And I guess we haven't really got those questions to them for them, because I think it's important for them to think about the situation, not just for us to give facts. I mean, it's important to give them data, but I think if they start to suspect the motives of the diaspora, then I think that's a more valuable thing, and that would be the first thing that I would like to ask him.
Contact Colombo Express for all your shipping needs. Colombo Express. We know that certain sections of international community, the Tamil diaspora, are really engaged in bringing this UN resolution. On the other hand, even among some Sri Lankans, there is a concern that the Sri Lankan government is not doing enough in terms of reconciliation, media freedom, protection of human rights, good governance, etc., etc. Can you respond on that?
Yes, there's always more you can do, but what we have to understand, the war was only over in 2009. I've visited Sri Lanka twice since, and the progress I've seen is tremendous. Just to give a little comparison, when Hurricane Katrina happened here back in 2009, the damage that that the city of New Orleans saw, it's still not repaired. So we are talking about Sri Lanka, which is a third world country. We are dependent on foreign funds and grants and aid. So I think we are amply doing, but I think that perception is basically our impatience on getting results also. Because I think the more damaging accusations are that we as a nation, that we discriminate against the other races. But the facts in the ground is not so. I lived in Sri Lanka for 18 years of my life. I lived in Colombo. I never, we lived with Tamils, Muslims in our neighborhoods. I mean, these were our childhood friends. We never, felt, or we never discriminated. I think most of the discrimination that we felt was owing to the economic imbalance after colonialism. Because there was such a racial disparity there after colonialism. So we have to be careful, what facts we present, because it's mainly I think what we see could be taken or eradicated by economic growth and development, where everybody would be afforded a higher life standard than what they have. So in terms of what the government is doing, I think they are on the right trajectory, because they are focusing on infrastructure that would grow the country's economy. So those are the right things to do. I think we just have to give time, or allow time for some of these to take over, because we were a stagnant economy for 30 years or 35 years during the war. So it does take a time. It does take time for us to recover from all that. And I think with time, it will be a great country back again.
Maybe there are some challenges in Sri Lanka, but everybody knows that there are no suicide bombings or terrorist attacks anymore, and there is a relative peace in Sri Lanka. Now it seems that many countries like UK, USA do not acknowledge or appreciate this change that happened after 30 years.
Yes, they don't acknowledge, because the information that they get, or they are bombarded by the diaspora, which basically highlight fairly or unfairly certain instances. I think the problem that we have is we have allowed these isolated instances to define what Sri Lanka is. And that is where the unfairness or the failure of the Sri Lankan side is. I think if you are able to really give them facts, I mean, Sri Lanka as a country have a very high literacy rate. We have very small very small gender gap. I mean, if you look at the actual facts, Sri Lanka is an amazing place for any race or any gender, or it's just. But that message is not given to them. And the best example I can give is in the U.S. we had this infamous case where one person, George Zimmerman killed Trayvon Martin. And now, if that situation was highlighted in the rest of the world, they would think that the U.S. is a very racial country. But when in fact is not the case. So it depends on what facts that we highlight, and our failure to basically give the true picture and show them what it is. So their perception is accurate in terms of what they receive. So I think we as a country, or we as a nation, as Sri Lankans, we should tell them what Sri Lanka is all about, give them the facts so that they can have a correct perception about the country.
Now, after the protest you had in front of the State Department, my understanding was a few of you met a State Department official. What did you share with him?
Yes, we met with Mr. Alan Greensberg. He's a director of the State Department. And we did give him some written documents so that he can read facts and know more about it. But essentially, what we told him was this is a lose-lose situation for the U.S. Number one, the U.S. has, their own financial trouble. So why are we focusing on a country like Sri Lanka and wasting our political capital or money, to that matter of fact? What we are trying to tell them is Sri Lanka is it's a growing economy. It's a vibrant economy in Southeast Asia, which is one of the best regions in the world right now. So by the U.S. trying to alienate Sri Lanka will go elsewhere. And that's a lose situation for USA, because the USA is not going to have leverage against Sri Lanka anymore, because there's other people who are investing in Sri Lanka, and so they are diverted to those countries. So in terms of that, it's a losing proposition for Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka is a very strategically located country for them for military purpose, or so in terms of those, I think the trajectory that the US has taken is not only damaging for Sri Lanka, but it's also damaging for US Sri Lankan relations and for USA as a country, because if they want to have a favorable presence in the Asian region, I think Sri Lanka is a good starting point to develop good relationships. And that's what we were telling them. And we also did focus and tell them, we did tell Mr. Greensberg that the facts we talked about, the Channel 4 video and how there has been a debunked video that is not getting proper coverage. So most of the way that the situation has been defined is not correct. And so those are the facts that we basically presented to him. And our goal was for this to be a beginning point where we can have a continuous dialogue with him and to present to him more facts.
Rukshan, you have been telling that there is another side of the story that needs to be shared, heard. So, in that context, what is your message to the Sri Lankans, especially to the Sri Lankans who live in the United States?
My message is be active in your community. I mean, we want your support because, just a handful of us, we are attempting to get our message across. But as the voting public in the United States, they have a very powerful tool that they can, because all we are asking them is to, meet with the senator and show your displeasure with the policies that the U.S. is making. What we have to understand is, just because we are in this country does not mean that we are insulated from what's going to happen in Sri Lanka, what's happening with Sri Lanka. As Sri Lankans, it is our responsibility, I think, because this is basically our playground, and something bad is happening in our playground to our brothers and sisters, and we are not doing anything about it. I think that's irresponsible on many of us, on the part of many of us. So I think we need to understand that, mobilize ourselves. It's not, it's not to do a lot of work. I mean, just a little bit of work in terms of writing a letter to a senator, to your congressman, and being active in the process. That's all we are asking. I mean, because there are so many Sri Lankans living here, but only a very handful that participate in this. And I think it's important because these are motherland, and we cannot forget that, especially when we have the most important tool of being the voting public here. So I think that would be my message to all Sri Lankans to actively participate, talk to your senators, get the message across. Every situation has good and bad, but let's accentuate the good, because Sri Lanka is worth it. So.
That concludes our news edition. We meet you again with another news edition of News, Views and Entertainment from Boston and USA. Till then, goodbye.